Okay, so in the previous video, I was talking about the unconscious, subconscious, conscious, which I said the unconscious serves as the repository or repertoire of belief systems. Subconscious for emotions, conscious for thought patterns. And I drew this symbol as a more, I would say, accurate relationship between these three components of the mind. And I wanted to clarify something that is so subtle. In fact, I myself learned this just a couple of months ago. That is what actually led me to use this more, I would say, accurate symbol for the ego or the physical mind, if you will. Because one misconception that is within the esoteric community is that this, I hope you can see that this is how the mind is supposed to look like, in a triangular fashion, with the conscious on top and the unconscious below and the subconscious below too, where most philosophers of the past centuries and epochs used to, I would say, hypothesize that the conscious mind is the supreme mind, and the unconscious and the subconscious are kind of inferior minds. But I wanted to bring our attention to that too, and say that is an outdated concept or outdated perception of viewing the mind, and can in fact negatively impact how our behavior functions. So, first of all, I brought up a new term, behavior. What is behavior? So, like I said, unconscious, subconscious, conscious are three components of the physical mind or the ego, which, when function mutually with each other, produce what we call behavior in humans. You have to have a certain belief to have a certain emotion, which, as we have said, springs from the belief. And you have to think according to how you believe. And so by thinking, by acting on your emotions through a certain type of belief, these three components function together to produce what we call behavior. And the behavior is one produced by the ego, physical mind. Let me put ego here so it doesn't confuse us. Ego. So ego includes three parts: unconscious, subconscious, conscious. These three function together to produce what we call behavior, right? So now we know what behavior is. Let's come back to the main point, which is how this symbol of mind has and can negatively impact how we function with the ego. So, first of all, by thinking that a conscious mind is the supreme mind, we abandon the unconscious and subconscious. And since the unconscious is what influences the conscious mind the most, thinking the conscious mind is instead the supreme mind will then reflect whatever beliefs are within the unconscious that need to be attended to and let go of. So, by thinking the conscious mind is the supreme mind, you act out from supremacy from whatever beliefs is within the unconscious. Because when you have an unconscious belief, a negative one in this scenario, that needs to be let go of, by disregarding the introspection needed to let go of the beliefs in the unconscious, there is no self-reflection, because the thinking mind, which is the conscious mind which produces the thought patterns, the thinking mind has been made supreme. So, since there's no self-reflection, there's only supremacy. Because if the belief is a negative one, and if the belief is a negative one and the mind or the ego has reinforced itself to think that the thinking mind is supreme, then it keeps generating thoughts from the unconscious that needs to be let go of, in the guise of the unconscious being inferior, if that makes sense. So, consequently, by also thinking that the conscious mind is supreme, emotions are mitigated in the reality of this ego structure. Emotions are invalidated, especially enlightening emotions like empathy, joy, and everything becomes selfish toward the conscious mind, the thinking mind. So, if we pay close attention to this pyramid, this version of the ego that has dominated the esoteric community for a very long time, we also see the symbol of the patriarchy. And needless to say, we all are witnessing in this modern age how flawed and fallible the patriarchy is. The patriarchy always prioritizes supremacy and dominance, which is because they function in the old misconceived or misinformed or erroneous, if you will. They function in an erroneous perception of how the mind should function. They have no reflection into their beliefs, which means there's no room for self-reflection. There's no room for guilt. There's no room for remorse, consequently. So, though this is subtle, it nevertheless should be paid attention to, which is why I use this symbol, which represents femininity in the alchemical symbols. It also represents water, which means flow. So when we use this more accurate symbol for the ego or the physical mind, with the unconscious here, subconscious and conscious, then we can know that the unconscious is what influences these two. Not in a supreme way, but in a more accurate, balanced relationship. It's sort of like a funnel, if you will, which is why it's inverted in that way. So when you think of it as a funnel, then you know that the beliefs is what filters through the conscious mind that produce the thought patterns, with consequential reflection to the emotional discharge from the subconscious. So let's be informed. I suggest looking at the mind from this perspective in order to have a more harmonious and holistic relationship with the ego, which is also a component of the dual mind. If you want to know more about the dual mind, stay tuned. Or I'm going to put a link or whatever to the next video under this video so you can know more about the dual mind, where I'm going to discuss the dual mechanism that functions with this ego to make up the true, fully fledged identity